Hi, I'm Zendor, and yes, you have been expecting me. I'll be your guide, playing the devil's advocate as we peer into the depths of what keeps us afraid, angry, ignorant, and immobile. You draw your own conclusions. So many times, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And in today's world with so much misinformation keeping us apart, it really does matter how we interact with one another.
Namaste and in Lakhets, and welcome to this episode of One World in a New World. I'm your host, Zen Benefiel, and I really would appreciate your subscription, your comments, your shares, especially your comments. I'll answer them. We don't talk about things enough today, especially the inner and outer conversations and the bridges that we've found or have, and what works in the world. So I'd appreciate that, and I know you will too. I'd also like to invite you to visit planetarycitizens.net. It is our nonprofit sponsor. There you can pick up a free copy of Planetary Citizens Awakening the Heart of Humanity, and I guarantee you it will spark insights and soothe your soul in ways you never dreamed possible, showing how we really are interconnected already and examples of it. So thanks for that too. Now, this week's guest is Will Steele, and he will steal you away, I'm sure. He is a UK-based high-performance and executive coach known for his work in transformational leadership and personal development. Now, if you're familiar with Landmark, he is a facilitator and has been long-term. I think he's spent 20 years in Landmark, wonderful organization started by Werner Erhard back in the, as Est originally back in the 70s. He's an author also of Free to Lead, Unleash Your Hidden Leadership Genius, which is on Amazon. We'll have a link below for you. And what he says is, I help business owners double their businesses and double their time off in 12 months. Wow, that's amazing. So I know we're going to have great conversations. We're going to dive into Will's life and how he first got connected and what that was like. So don't go away. We'll be right back with another apocalyptic chat. Namaste and in Lakhets, and welcome to this episode of One World in a New World. I'm your host, Zen Benefiel, and I really would appreciate your subscription, your comments, your shares, especially your comments. I'll answer them. We don't talk about things enough today, especially the inner and outer conversations and the bridges that we've found or have, and what works in the world. So I'd appreciate that, and I know you will too. I'd also like to invite you to visit planetarycitizens.net. It is our nonprofit sponsor. There you can pick up a free copy of Planetary Citizens Awakening the Heart of Humanity, and I guarantee you it will spark insights and soothe your soul in ways you never dreamed possible, showing how we really are interconnected already and examples of it. So thanks for that too. Now, this week's guest is Will Steele, and he will steal you away, I'm sure. He is a UK-based high-performance and executive coach known for his work in transformational leadership and personal development. Now, if you're familiar with Landmark, he is a facilitator and has been long-term. I think he's spent 20 years in Landmark, wonderful organization started by Werner Erhard back in the, as Est originally back in the 70s. He's an author also of Free to Lead, Unleash Your Hidden Leadership Genius, which is on Amazon. We'll have a link below for you. And what he says is, I help business owners double their businesses and double their time off in 12 months. Wow, that's amazing. So I know we're going to have great conversations. We're going to dive into Will's life and how he first got connected and what that was like. So don't go away. We'll be right back with another apocalyptic chat.
Explore the thoughtless-sphere. Embark on a life-changing journey of self-discovery. Embrace harmony with self, with others, with Earth. One world in a new world. Zen Benefiel skillfully ignites conversations, guiding guests to reveal personal journeys and perspectives. Listeners are inspired to seek knowledge and find wisdom in their own lives. Join this transformative journey as we navigate the depth of human experience.
Will, it's so great to see you. We've had a scheduling kerfuffle initially, and now that you're here, I'm just really excited about the conversation we're going to have, and thanks for showing up.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation. And yeah, we sorted that out. So here we are.
Yeah, here we are.
Yeah.
So, we acknowledging your background. You also came out of the military as a fighter pilot, which is a huge accomplishment, and very few actually reach that level. So I'm sure that that has a influence on what you're doing today. But before we get into that, the work that you're doing, the association with Landmark and your life in general indicates that you had some interconnective activity early on in life and maybe set that aside for a while. So, what kinds of things happened early on or when they did uh, that gave you some context that there's a much larger reality that we're dealing with than what we see in front of us?
That's a good question. I mean, and the earliest thing that springs to mind, and maybe it's because of the diagrams behind you, I was at 15 and I was on what we call an outward bound course, some program that I'd been awarded it. I mean, I was brought up in the countryside. I delivered milk every day with my mother for, 7 days a week from about 3 years old all the way up to going to university. So all my life, it seemed like I'd lived with milk, but they gave me this outward bound course. They just honored me with it. And I went away for 3 weeks. First time I've been on a vacation for more than 5 days.
Right.
And yeah, and it talked about leadership, and I just felt like, yeah, I'm the leader, right? But there was this poster, and there's a poster with a moon on it, and it said, only those who risk going too far find out how far they can go.
Very true.
Like, wow. Yeah, wow. So it's like, well, what's possible? I mean, the sky's the limit. There is no limit,
Sure.
right? That just, I don't know. It
Well,
just
right. I
really
mean, the image
resonated.
behind me, a shot of the Earth from the moon, that was taken
Yeah.
by, I think, Neil Armstrong originally. I'd met Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man on the moon, and had a really interesting conversation with him about the metallic silver cylinder that spiraled around the LEM all the way down to the surface that was not
Oh,
from Earth. So those
right,
kinds of
right,
things you couldn't talk about back then and had me promise not to until after his death.
right, right, right. Wow.
So
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
did this shot get you the moon inspire you?
It was like, just go for it, whatever it is that you do, just go for it. I just started rock climbing, and I went for it, and I was rock climbing, and really, I moved. There's grades to rock climbs, right? So there's easy
Sure.
climbs, and then they get more
Yeah, yeah,
difficult. And
yeah.
in the guidebook, there's an
Oh, I
actual
did. There's five
numbering
five,
system.
5'7", 5'9",
Yeah,
5'11". Right.
yeah, that's the American system. It's slightly
Isn't
different
that
than
fun
UK book.
though?
Yes. So I was like going for arrive at a crag. I want to climb the hardest thing on the crag, and it's like, yeah, you might fall off, right? You got
So
we had little wedges
you
to
weren't
go
roped
in.
off from the top?
No,
You're
a
doing
rope,
free climbing?
no, not from the top, not from the top. It's free climbing. So you tie off
Okay.
here. You've got a partner who kind of belays you, and then as you go, you put little wedges in the cracks, whatever you can
Yeah,
get
yeah,
in,
yeah. Okay.
and then
Okay.
put a carabiner, and the rope goes through that. So if you
Yep.
fall, you'll go, twice as far as you've gone past that last piece, right?
First
So
time
that's
I
called
tried lead
leading.
climbing, I got 60 foot up to the first anchor and slipped and came, not tumbling,
Whoa.
but just, sliding down the rock face, my climbing shoes sounded like a cart in a bicycle tire. And what do you
Yeah,
do? Right? You just watch the
yeah.
ground come up and, push off and hopefully you land right.
I've had a few close encounters in that game, but yeah. But the thing is, it was just like you go until either you get up or you come off, and it
Mhm.
was like that whole phrase, only those with risk going too far find out how far they can go.
Right.
So that was in rock climbing, and then so I left school at 16. I didn't think I was academic. I didn't think that was my thing. So I became, an engineer. But then I remember looking at my hands and going,
School
God, I've got
wasn't your
dirty
thing and you
hands.
became an engineer. Oh my God.
Well, academic for me was things
Well,
like,
sure. Well,
learning French or whatever, it seemed to be like not my thing, physics,
yeah,
all that stuff.
but you
I
found
needed
something you
all of
had
them
passion
later,
for.
but yeah, I just didn't. Well, if you read my book, you will find that we have limiting beliefs, and they come from little moments where you make decisions and don't realize how impactful those decisions are. So I remember at 11 years old being in the classroom and looked across at Robert Tice. He said, we all came to this new school. So this was the first year, first couple of
Hmm.
weeks. And he knew every answer to every question the teacher asked. He already spoke French. He played the violin. He could do Latin. We'd never done any of that. And I
Right.
looked across and thought, well, that's not me. I'm not like that.
Sure.
And then realized that was me writing myself off from any possibility of, being a
Sure.
scholar
Now,
or
do you find that we
anything.
often accept other people's beliefs that, as a child, we grow and program from what we hear, feel, and experience, right? And we're an assimilationist, if you will, in life, where we listen and we absorb all of these things thinking they're our own until we
Mhm.
find out, wait a minute, why am I thinking that? Right? And you start
Well,
questioning.
there is a school of thought that none of the thoughts are yours. You don't actually create any of them. It's more like, and you probably like this. This school of thought is you're more like an antenna,
Hmm.
and you're tuning in like a radio set, old-fashioned radio set tunes in right into that frequency, and now you got that
Sure.
channel. So it's like you're, you're receiving these thoughts
Right.
because
Well,
you
it
don't
still
have to
has
do
to
anything
start
to have those thoughts.
still receiving those, and I would make a distinction of this, has to begin with curiosity, right? You got to want to know whatever that is. So there's that baseline curiosity that allows you to open up that antenna.
Well, I think what you're talking about are like really kind of insightful thoughts. I'm talking about it, that's true also,
Yeah.
but I'm talking about everyday thoughts, like I hate this, or I'm not good at this, so I'm not good at that. It's so instant,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They say we got 70,000 thoughts a day, right? And
right?
probably three quarters, maybe even five eighths or seven eighths are self-deprecating,
Yep, and
limiting.
repeating the same
Yeah.
thoughts,
Yeah.
exact
Yeah,
same thoughts.
until you say something, the thought spills out, right? You start
Yeah.
saying something about it. And this is the whole thing about the inner and outer realities that we're bereft of talking about because we don't discuss what goes on inside of us that got us there.
Mm.
Now, I think today we're having that a bit more because there's a need for it with the current world situation and how people are trying to navigate through it. What I find though is that in this query of understanding that there's an opening that takes place. And like you say, there's this um, recognition of the thoughts that we have had and a questioning of them, perhaps even a suspension, which is what Landmark's about, right?
I'm not quite sure. It's recognizing that they're not you, that it's just
Right.
automatic, and then at some point, if you're open to that and keep looking and keep inquiring, there's a moment that happens when you get like you're the observer of those. Like
Sure.
you sit, you got like, wow,
Right.
well, that's
I heard a line the
ridiculous.
other day, we're scientists seeking truth in the intangible.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, we're looking for all these answers and explanations, and they're only possible answers and explanations.
Right.
You
And
know,
where they come from, inside, right? Most of the time. That's where the clarity comes. Did you find that? I mean, I'm supposing that to be true. For me, it is, right? There's a lot of external information that you can get validation from, but the insights really come from within when you, for lack of better, go into your closet and pray, right? That's an old phrase, but it's the truth. We call it the recursive function in the LLM, the large language models today, right? Where
uh-huh.
the system queries itself for problem solving. We do the same thing, hopefully.
Yeah. Well,
Now, did you find that most of us look outside for way too long?
um, well, it's a little bit of a dilemma here in this conversation. So
Sure,
one of the things that took me 18 months to break free from, and I had a lot of support with other forum leaders around me, was to get
hmm
out of my head, because I lived in there. I lived in those thoughts, and it's all automatic. You have a thought and you think about it and trying to figure it out, but you're going around and round the labyrinth, of
right,
thoughts, and you never get out, and you don't resolve things in there. If I've got a problem with you, I'm not going to resolve it in my head, but we all try and do that. The way to
right,
resolve it is say, listen, I got this problem. I got this and this and this. And you go, oh, well, okay, I can see that. But have you thought about this? Oh, I didn't know about that. And you work the thing out here, not in here. So I spent 18 months, being hammered every time they caught me kind of in my head thinking, and it was kind of obvious. If you watch me on video, I'd be looking up and I see people, they look up into their forehead. So when people go like,
sure.
well, I don't really know. Then they're not with you. They're not present. They're in.
Well,
They're
yeah,
in
that's
it.
all NLP stuff, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know about NLP. I've kind of looked at it, but I can't say I'm an
Well, it
NLP
defines the
practitioner.
directions that we look and what's happening in that process.
Ah,
And most of it's
okay.
pretty accurate,
Yeah,
right, as to
yeah,
where we
yeah.
are in time and space and the direction that we're looking to get information.
Yes, yeah. When you're present and you're not in all of that, you're just actually in the moment. All the answers seem to show up.
Well, I think, and maybe you've not heard of this yet, and maybe you have. There's an indigenous philosophy that they call the three brain system, and it's how we natively process. Gut's the first brain, heart's
Yeah,
the second brain,
yeah.
head is the third brain. So we're mostly mostly bird brains at that point, right? Because we're in our heads and we shove
Yes.
everything down into our bodies and wonder why we have
Yep.
problems. Well,
Yes.
science is now showing that we got more neurosensors in the gut than we ever realized, and we've had intuition and gut feelings and right all that kind of nomenclature for millennia. We don't realize exactly what it means because now with quantum science is showing that it's all energy, it's all vibration, there's nothing really physical about this world, although we perceive it. So it's a really strong
Yeah.
belief system, right? And
Yeah.
yet that vibrational sensitivity is where we create those relationships based on the resonance of them and and striving to feel that resonance with another because that's really the
Yeah.
core. um,
Yeah. It's a
right?
good
We
word,
just
that.
want to love and be loved.
It's a good word though, resonant. When you resonate with someone, it, it, it's like we have an expression in England, you click. We just clicked,
Yeah,
me and this person, we
absolutely.
just clicked. And that's
We have it
resonant.
here
That's
too.
becoming in the same frequency. Yeah.
Yeah, that one
Yeah.
crossed the pond.
Okay, good. 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 I was working with a guy called Christian Mickelson. He's got his own coaching business and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And he and I've become good friends. And he's all about intuition. And he trained me over the last couple of years in tuning in to the intuition, which is in the gut, like you said, the gut and the heart, right? You
Right.
know, and I have spent my life being very headstrong, very kind of in my thoughts. So in my thoughts versus in my feelings. You know, and there's a whole school
Well,
of
you can
thought,
have thought feelings or feeling thoughts, right?
feeling
Because that
thoughts.
that sensation evokes interpretation,
Yes.
right? And it's
Yeah.
how we choose to interpret, like you're finding out, right, in the process that you're going through. What's that like, moving from, they say the from head to heart's the longest journey,
Yes.
18 inches, right? Well,
Right.
what about the 24 inches that it gets to your gut, right?
Yes.
Um, what's that like for you? What's the process that you found yourself going through internally in what you were experiencing and recognizing as shifts that were taking
Yes.
place?
To I mean, I can't think of a moment right now, but it's the recognizing that something's not right or something's not okay or you're uncomfortable with something, okay, and then just not walking over it.
Right.
It's like
So what's that feel like?
it's a,
What's the initial sensation that you have that brings that awareness with it?
uh, how do you how do you articulate just this sense of something's off or not right? You know, it's like for me, it's down my left hand side, lower gut, and it just kind of sinks a bit, you know, or gets heavy. It's
Okay.
like a
Okay.
like that, right? And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
and
yeah.
like let me have a look at that. I need to
Yeah.
really like, you
Sometimes
know,
it'll be a little
look at that.
quiver of something not feeling right. Right.
Yeah. And there is a test that Christian taught me actually, where you can test with your, you know, muscle. They can use this for all sorts. All
Kinesiology.
sorts of practitioners use muscle testing, right?
Right.
Because
Oh, that's a David
your
Hawkins
brain
used that for
will
his
not
scale.
be truthful. You know, your mind generally will just say whatever it's saying. So
Right.
you can test the muscle. So one of the things is you kind of do this. So you say, okay, my name is Will. Okay, and it holds, right? And my name is Sarah, and it doesn't, right? But you've got to practice to be able to get skillful at it. So you don't
Sure.
trick
And
yourself,
you got to
right?
trust yourself ultimately
Yeah,
too.
but you get to know it. So when there's like a decision to make, you
Hmm.
know, I should invest in this, or I should invest with them. You know, I should invest with them. Oh, that's a no. That's a no. That's like telling me definitely no. I should trust this person. Oh, yeah, I can trust this person. You know, it's like, so you develop first. You use this to check. You know, it's like a
Right.
backup because
Right.
the,
Yeah. Self-checking system. Right.
and you've got to, the more you
Literally.
practice, the more it works, right? But when you first start, it's a little bit hit and miss, right? And so you kind of,
Well, because
you
you're
have to
still in your
try it.
head, it would seem,
Mm-hmm.
kinda, right? You're not
Yes.
really trusting the process yet.
Yes.
And then you grow into that over time because it proves itself.
Yeah.
David Hawkins and Power versus Force and his consciousness scale does the same thing. You use kinesiology to test yourself to see where you're at on that scale of consciousness. I'm not quite sure
Right.
we could do that with the spiral dynamics as planetary, you know, situation, but maybe we'll get to that as we learn things like you're finding and sharing right now.
Mm. Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't know what spiral dynamics is. I've never heard of that.
Um,
What's that?
well, it's a way of looking at civilizations and where they're at on that consciousness scale, so
Ah,
to speak.
okay.
And there's like 8 levels, 9 levels, something like that, and they go all the way from warring up to unity consciousness
Mm.
and everything in between. Now, it's not meant to place judgment, right? It's meant just to access and observe where things are at without judgment so that then you can work with it, move it,
And be
stay with it,
appropriate, be
whatever.
responsible. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, very good. But I have heard of those levels, but haven't heard of that spiral
Yeah,
thing
Beck
before.
Graves, oh gosh, it's 40 years of research that they put into it.
Mm. Yeah, it's pretty amazing, huh?
Yeah, really is. And we use that
Yeah.
for planetary citizens as part of it. We use the spiral dynamics and co-creation wheel, which also came out of that, which breaks down society into 12 sectors so that they could be managed better as a holistic system. And
Mm.
Barbara Marx Hubbard and some of her folks developed that. Um, Great model to work with in looking at things more largely and yet simply in breaking down the sectors and figuring out where the silos are and how to mitigate them. And that's where we're
Gotcha.
at today.
Gotcha. Okay. Good.
So how
Sounds
did
a
this?
little bit. It sounds a little bit L. Ron Hubbardy when you said that thing. Because I was starting to think, hang on, you see, sounds a little bit
No,
like some of
no.
what I've
Well,
read anyway.
they did introduce the audits with the phaeton, right? Which we don't
Oh,
realize
okay.
that that's a Greek word, phaeton, and it means thinker. And
Right.
some say that's where we get the word Satan from, as a misguided effort to take us away, because we do think too much. We're all phtonic beings. Well, that was the beginning of the limitations where the, I would say, patriarch decided they wanted to take control. And Constantine at the Council of Nicaea said, okay, we're going to use this to manage people and we're going to kill them if they don't profess belief. That's a great way to start Christianity, right? At that point,
Uh-huh.
to
I,
proliferate it. So
yeah,
that's
what
what
you're talking
happened.
about is not my domain, so I'm not familiar with
Well, but if
the
it,
conversation.
I realize it is, and however,
Yeah.
part of my experience is being able to, I found all this stuff and explored it, and I see how it fits in the overall picture of how we generally deal with things in the false belief systems that have come up that you are finding, in your head that you're uh, conflicted with to begin with, and then gradually find a way through them to find the kernels of truth in them.
Yeah, well, I think mostly I work with people. So let's just kind of take a more of an overview of how I work. So I work with,
Sure.
let's say, mostly business owners. Just I can work with anybody about anything. I work with people with their relationships. I lead programs to 90,000 people, dealing with all aspects of life to cause a transformation with them, to cause a new experience of oneself to open up, a new
Sure.
possibility for life to open up, a new realms of possibility. That's the work I did with Lemma. Now I work mostly with business owners, entrepreneurs, and you could say that their business is like a vehicle for transformation because, what I have found is most people can get a business up to about $1 million a year by doing mostly everything yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to go to 3 or 5 million, you can't do that.
No,
So,
how do you
so
scale, right?
yeah. So the business owner find it very difficult to give stuff away. People don't do it the way they should do it, or don't do it as well as them, and it's their name on the thing, and so there's all this attachment to it being exactly them doing it, right? So to break them from there, to be able to give it away, to not,
Right.
I don't mean abdicate responsibility.
Well,
I
no, it's
mean
their child,
train people,
right? They have
delegate people.
raised.
Yeah. Yeah, so that they do that, and then once they can extract themselves from all the doing and be overlooking the business, looking ahead at how to create business, looking ahead, what's the future hold. The people in the company they've now hired to do all the stuff that they were doing and now growing the business. They're doing all the doing. They're the machinery, if you like, of the
Right. Well,
business.
delegation, right? That's the real. How do you do that? How do you trust who you're delegating to? And there's a whole process in developing
Yeah, so that's
that.
why I say it's like a transformational process. Like that growing the business is your vehicle for your transformation, because when you can't delegate, you're the lid, you're
Mhm.
limiting the expansion of the business. But once we get you free of that, there is no lid, and that's where you can really, you know it, some people think, well, I've got enough money, I don't need to grow my business, because what they see is it's going to mean working twice as hard to double the business. Well, what if it's working 5 times less? and it grows
Right.
the business
Right.
multiple times.
Well, it goes back to Zig, right? Zig Ziglar. You help enough people
Yeah,
get what they want. Dale Carnegie says the same thing. You help enough people to get what they want, and then you're going to have what you want. Now,
yeah.
how do you determine, everybody's got a dream, right, of where they see themselves, or hopefully the vision, the end in mind. Uh,
I don't know about that. They
well,
may have had
that's
one.
why that's
They
why
may
I
have
was
had
saying that,
one.
because we assume
They
that,
may
but
have
not many
one.
do.
They might not be present to it. They may have
Yeah.
at one point had an inspiration, like, oh, what if I could do that, or I'd love to do that. And I talk about that in the book. You see, so when you're a kid, you look at people, you look like, oh, a rock star. I want to be a rock star. Or you look at a doctor, you go, yeah, I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a dentist. That's amazing. Then let's say you want to be a doctor, and you realize doctors have got to be good at biology, chemistry, probably physics as well. All the sciences, and you're
Right.
not good at chemistry. So, oh, no, that's it. I can't be a doctor. So,
Yeah.
boom, you limited yourself.
Yeah.
When nobody's good, not many people are good at anything when they first start out. You have to learn it, you know.
Sure.
And if you don't
Fake it
learn
till you
it, it's
make it,
unlikely
right?
you'll be able to do it. Yeah. But the point is that you make these decisions that then limit you. They close you off to that, and they close you off to that, and you go through life, and you end up in this box, but you don't know you're in a box. It looks like you've got everything you want, except you're not good at this. You're not one of those. You're not that kind of person. You're not this. You're not that. Before you know it, you're in this multifaceted glass box that you relate to as you.
Right.
So what by identifying these decisions that kind of close that off or made you more like this, by identifying those decisions, you free yourself up until there is no box,
Right. Now that's
and then
the inner
anything's
work,
possible.
right? That's
Yeah,
the inner
it's
work
the
that
inner
one
work,
has
but
to
it
go
comes
through.
from having the conversation.
Yeah. Right. What I found interesting, I after my experience as a teen of for lack of a better near-death experience, it was a little more profound because of what I returned with and the understanding that we're all cosmic consciousness condensed into form, just unaware. Well, what do you do with that, right? These inner questions that you have, the conversations, until someone like with a counselor, therapist, or whatever, it's not necessarily what they say to you in response, it's the questions that they ask and you listening to yourself respond, right? There's a tertiary level of listening that occurs that gives you the opportunity to analyze yourself in the process. We don't always recognize that. However, are these some of the things that come up in the conversations that you facilitate?
For sure. I mean, one of the things that I still lead programs in the Middle East. It's not the forum. I don't use their technologies distinctions, but
Hmm.
I'm working with people to see their limitations and their limiting beliefs and where they came from and how that impacts them, to get them to what we call fitra. Fitra is an Arabic word that doesn't translate directly into English, but it really means your true essence, your true nature, your true you. And also
So
in
with all of
nature,
this,
because
why do you think we're having the challenges, or not that we are, the Western world, but why are they having challenges with themselves in that area, which is, I'm sure, why you are there to begin with, right? How do you see this evolutionary process taking place that they're obviously interested in?
sorry, I don't understand the question. Who?
Okay.
The
So you're going to the Middle East to do these workshops,
Yes.
and you're working with people that are attempting to ascend from where they were, right? What do
Well,
you,
yeah. It's more like going. It's not trying to get someplace. It's trying to get back to being who you really are.
well, yeah, it's a memory, a remembering process. It and by doing so, you ascend in your ability to perform and relate to others.
Right.
Okay, that's how I was using that word.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
That second part for sure.
yeah. So what do you find are the core um, business, personal, and maybe even cultural challenges that you're helping to facilitate them through?
Um, mm, um,
Or is that part of it? Is it different, or do you see that as
oh, it is different.
different?
It is different. They've got a different culture, and every culture has its own things, foibles, if you like, or ways that they do things, or where they think. I mean, you don't have to go from, UK to the Middle East or America to the Middle East and say, oh, that cultural different. No, you can go. You can. I mean, I led programs in Boston, and then went to New York, and they're really quite different. And
Sure.
then you go to
Well, even
Philadelphia, which is about the same distance again, and it's very, very different.
yeah. Well, I live in the
And
Phoenix
then you go
metro
along to
area, and it's like a
Atlanta,
melting pot.
and it's very different again. So you've got different
Yeah.
cultures. You don't have to be along a whole other world apart to get a different culture, a different, you know,
Well, you
conversation, if
mentioned
you like,
before
cultural
that.
conversation.
Do you
Say again?
find that essence of loving and being loved is at the core of this, in that true self nature?
Oh yeah, when you're in, let's call fitra, right? When you're in fitra, you're just connected. You're just in the moment. You're present with other people,
Mhm.
and um,
What's the difference that they share with you in how they are sensing those moments, right? The ones that are present, the ones that are not so present. What's the differences that they're sharing?
and it is different when they get to, you know, that they're not a thing, that they're not fixed, that they're not, they're just here, they're just
Mhm.
present, right? uh um it's quite spiritual for them,
Well,
when
spirituality
they,
is about interconnectedness anyway.
yeah. There's a quote by, I use a couple of Rumi quotes. Rumi's
I love him. Oh yeah.
okay, good, Rumi,
Oh
right? A
yeah, yeah,
poet,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
He's a poet and a theologist, and he said, he said, I wish I could I wish I could get I wish I could get you to get the bliss I find in nothing, which is beautiful. They love that. And then the next one, which is not quite, it's a slight misquote, but it works anyway. So, let yourself be empty, then God can live your life.
And how true that is, that, and being a fighter pilot, I don't know if you ever had any UFO experiences or anything like that, but there
No,
was a
I
guy.
was a fighter pilot briefly, by the way, and then I flew tactical um, transport.
Okay,
So I did both. Yeah.
all right. Um, be that as it may, whether or not you had, experiences with other craft or seeing them, there was a guy that ran Canada's UFO investigation program, kind of like the United States Blue Book. And he had communications. And one of the things that these advanced races revealed, or race, depending, revealed to him was that humans don't understand nothingness, which is what they
Mm,
base everything on, right?
mm,
That it, and that kind of goes, makes you go, huh? What? You just spoke it too. When you let go of everything, only then can your true self emerge.
mm-hmm.
Now, why don't we
Beautiful.
understand that?
Uh I think you have to experience it. The moment you understand something, you conceptualize it, and the concept of something is not the thing.
Oh,
So
right.
now
Well, you
you
put a
remove.
label on it, and then therein you diminish it.
Well, then you stop looking. Oh yeah, that's that. Okay, good. I know
Right.
that now. That's a killer. I know that is a killer. The moment you say I know that, you stop being present to what is there.
That's a key word phrase, right? This is, oh, yeah, you really don't, right? If you could only pay attention to yourself when you hear those words come out of your mouth and say, oh, wait a minute, do I really?
Yeah, yeah,
It's that comfort with the unknown that we have a problem with.
yeah. We want to know an answer. We want an answer. We want, that part of us just wants. It's very good because what you see, life is uncertain. but we want it to be, the brain wants it to be certain. The brain is always trying to predict, right?
Sure.
So keep you alive, see where the danger is coming from, take the opportunity and catch that thing. So it's always trying to predict. So that's not gone away. So
But do you find
we're
that
trying to get certainty,
do you
but it's
find
an
that it's
illusion.
more, I love this. Do you find that it's more learning how to live in paradox? Because the brain's gonna have is bipolar, right? It's looking at the pendulum swing.
Mm, mm.
How do you
Yeah,
get
I mean, there's a
comfortable in
lot
the
of paradoxes in
nothingness
life.
and being in that paradox?
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Do you
I'm not
find that
sure where
that's
this
part of
comes
what's
from,
taking place
but when you say
in the
you're
process?
everything and nothing,
Yeah, yeah, in some
I
place in
mean that
between,
that that takes some that uh takes some understanding. But I did once have a guy. He gave a little talk on that, and it was not very long. And it just took something to get your head around what he's saying. So he was using a piece of chalk. I can use this little box, right? So
right?
if you have if you have this, right, this object, and it, it's a thing. So here you are, and here it is, right? So there's you and there's it, right? And there's all these objects. Now, if this object grows and grows and grows and grows and grows until it's the size, it goes out to infinity in all directions. So all there is this. This is everything. It's also no thing anymore.
Right.
Once it's everything, it's no thing. So it's everything and nothing.
Sure. Well, here maybe this will make sense in what I realized about the cosmic consciousness thing, right? It's everything and nothing, and yet each one of us are connected to it. This is Vedantic philosophy, right?
Yeah.
15,000 years old. We're all divine threads incarnate, connected to source, capable of God consciousness. Well, that means to me that each one of us has a direct connect to the infinite intelligence, the everything, that's specific to our particular point of light, that fragment that we have within us, and the vibrational or the frequency, whatever it's at, right? And that's now being measured and talked about where, even 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't. There were some
Mm,
opportunities to talk about the field, Lynn Taggart's work, and then Bruce Lipton talks about the biology of belief, and Candace Pert as well. And so then you've got this progression that, okay, we're understanding more of ourselves. What do you find in the relationships that you're building in the Middle East that brings them into that state of true self, and then how do their perspectives on the world change as a result?
So you got the
Is
internet
that
was
a
a little
fair
bit choppy
question?
there. Can you say that again? Can you
Okay,
say that question again?
sure. Hopefully, right? They come out sometimes, and I don't know what I'm talking. That's that nothingness coming present. So in your workshops, and you're talking to people about this becoming the true self, what do you notice that shifts in their worldview as a result?
As a result of experiencing themselves as just being here.
More of a planetary
Everything shifts.
citizen, perhaps?
Yeah, yeah. Well, they don't talk like that. They more
Well,
like
sure, we have different terms.
see one of the greetings over there is peace be with you. Um, and that's what it's like.
And
They're
here's
about peace. What they want, what they put in their forms, what they want to get out of the program. I just want peace. I want peace. I want peace.
well, how do you get
And
peace?
that's
By killing the infidels.
look. That's such a small minority. That's like saying the whole of America is some particular sect that goes and does this particular
Sure,
thing.
sure. I
You
get
know,
that. And
it's
yet that's the fly in the ointment, right?
well, that's the see one thing. As I've gone around the world and led programs to people in many different countries.
Mm-hmm.
What we get fed in the press, what we get fed on the news is a narrative. And then you have a view of those people are that way. Well, no, there's some extremist people, some faction there that's that, but they're like 0.001% of the entire population, yet the whole population gets labeled as that they're like
Right.
that. They're all extremists or something. It's not the case
Oh,
at
totally agree.
all.
Totally agree.
Um, Unfortunately, I've had a, you talk about questioning things and questioning yourself. I've questioned the news for most of my adult life. I was, when I was in the Air Force, there was one time I was flying in and out of Sarajevo during the Bosnian conflict, during the war
Mm-hmm.
there. I was flying in and out of there a lot, and the press turned up and the politicians turned up. So we're getting briefed by the brief, and then there's what the press said, and then what goes out on the news, because we're watching it in our little tents there. I remember being in Ancona, Italy, in the tent watching Sky News. The guy outside has just interviewed one of our crew, and the way it comes across is like, how have they got this conversation to be the conversation?
Right. Totally twisted,
Like, they
manipulated.
totally spun it a
Yeah.
different way.
And right now, the media streams. This is one of the things that, let me digress for a little bit. Howard Bloom wrote a great book called The Lucifer Principle. And in it, he does a scientific study of the history of how population has been manipulated with
Yes,
lies being told by a very few people who control the media stream, whether it
there
be a
you go.
town crier or the internet. Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
It's the same
yeah.
process. Now, as a kid, I had my comeuppance. There was a guy named Soupy Sales who was a comedian, had a TV show for kids. And they would end the
Oh,
show with him getting a whipped cream pie in the face, right? And everybody'd laugh, right? So he came to our small town for sidewalk days. And so
yes.
I'm this 7, 8-year-old kid, right? Doesn't know any better. I get a whipped cream pie and I walk up to
Yes.
him and, and he starts talking and he bends over and I plant the pie in his face thinking that was going to be cool,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Ooh, was it not cool, right? So here, that gave me, here's the example on TV. Here's a completely different person in person. So where's the
Hmm.
disparity? Why? Right? So at 7, 8 years old, I began questioning the difference between what's going on TV and
Yeah.
what's showing up for real.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
most of us don't question. We want to believe what we're being told. How do you see that affecting the need for change that we have now?
Um. Uh, Man, I think that it's like trying to coach somebody who doesn't want to be coached or is not coachable.
Hmm.
It doesn't work. You're both wasting your time. So people have got to be open to being coached. They've got to be open, curious, coachable, committed, something they're up to, and they want you to look at what they're doing. How can they do it better? And they're providing all the drive, and they're all providing all the the doing to produce the result.
Right.
Versus someone who shows up and go, okay, well, what you got for me today? What have I got for you? What I got for you? I'm here to coach you. What do you want coaching in? I don't know. All right, good. Guess we should reschedule the call then, because it's going to be a waste of time.
Right. What do you
So,
see as being bridges to
so, so, so that's
this?
so. In your
Yeah.
answer to your question, why I gave you that analogy there, is because people are. I mean, how do you? It's hard to change people's view, very hard. So how do you get somebody who's not interested in knowing or the actual truth,
Right.
to actually have them question what they're hearing, question what they're hearing on the television, question what they're
Sure.
being told they need to do. We just had COVID. That's like a whole debate for people.
Well, and I see the silver lining as the obsession on self-hygiene, getting people to turn inside, do some self-examination during the sequestration, because it couldn't do much anything else. And those who did began looking for others who were doing the same, and virtual groups just basically exploded overnight because of it.
Mm.
Did you witness that as well? Is that kind of what you saw in your view of things?
Um, we're talking about the pandemic, during the pandemic.
Right, those that rose above it and realized that there's more going on and started questioning, their true selves and the truth of what was happening.
I just found myself doing that right from the beginning, to be
Yeah.
honest. I mean, I was like, what is this? You know?
Yeah,
And
my
and
wife
I
and I, we
actually
didn't
got
change
what they
anything.
call I got COVID right at the beginning. Felt terrible, felt awful. But it was just like a really bad flu, and for some people, obviously, people died,
Well, the
but also
numbers
there's a lot of
state
people
that
died, and
that
it's
was,
questionable.
yeah. And the actual numbers just show that, yeah, it was a little larger flu season. Now, there
Well,
was
yeah, nobody died of flu, right, that year.
No, but there was, well, yeah,
Nobody died of
complications,
flu. Nobody
pneumonia.
died of TB. Nobody died, all these diseases that people would normally die of. All of a sudden, nobody died of all of those things. It
Right.
was
It was all
all
labeled
COVID.
COVID. Yeah.
I mean, Tony
Well,
Robbins came out and said that, and then he was silenced. He was like, "Oh, he came out
there
with this
was
whole
a
thing. This is all
senator who
made
is
up."
also an MD here in America that came out saying that they were told by the medical association to label everything COVID, no matter what.
Exactly, exactly.
So that just, how do you trust a system that's willing to do that?
I know. They burned it, burned the bridge, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, do
Um,
we burn it or do we build another one? I did road bridge construction partnering workshops for a number of years, and one of my biggest jobs, $500 million, was the destruction of a bridge over a quarter-mile canyon and a rebuilding of another one.
wow,
So in that process, there's, the first one has to get the new one has to get built first before you start doing anything to the old one.
right.
And in the transition, then you've, you know, you use the new and forget the old because it's going to be taken away, right?
Mm.
Now, Bucky has stated it. Even Socrates, I think, was the first one that we forget about that says, don't fight the system, build a better one.
Mm. Socrates said that, did he? I didn't know that. I've heard
Yeah,
that one.
yeah. Now,
That's
Buckminster
good.
Fuller is credited with it, but Socrates actually said it to begin with.
Mm.
So more of those ancient philosophers, right? And
Yeah.
it's all of this because do you find that in this discovery process that if you do dig deep, that you find that information that's being shared now replete in the ancient literature that's available? We just haven't been able to access, learn it, and apply it. And so we use modern day terms that echo that.
Well, when I'm working with people, I'm just trying to get people back to the really basic stuff. So more like trying to use the old stuff versus whatever new words and languages and stuff we've got. See, people have got lots of knowledge, but knowledge won't get you to being. It won't get you to
No,
give you an access to being.
more
It won't
often than
alter
not,
your
it keeps
being.
you from it, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So it's like, why would I give you more knowledge? I'm trying to get behind all of it. So when I was training to lead the forum, I was trained by a guy called, one of the people who trained me was called Jeff Wilmot. And he used to say this thing that took me a long time to actually get what he was saying. I mean, I'm talking like years.
Mhm.
He said, you can't tell people, you have to like point. and don't look at my finger, look at where I'm pointing. I'm like, why is he saying that to these people? Why is he saying that? Well, he's trying to get you to look at something with yourself and
But
see
not
what you
telling you what
see.
to see.
No, because then otherwise they're not giving you an answer. They don't want an answer. They want,
Exactly.
as Socrates said, it's the questions.
Right. Oh, I loved it.
You see,
I taught
once
high
you get
school
an
for a
answer,
number
you
of
stop
years, and
looking.
Socratic method was just so spectacular. Students hated it.
Right. Really. Really. That's mostly what I kind of, have that as a place to come from. I try to get people to discover things for themselves. See, you could tell. I mean, a simple example. It's probably overused example, but riding a bicycle. You can tell somebody how to ride a bike. They can watch videos. They can watch everybody else. They can know everything there is to know, and the dynamics and the thermal this and the physics of it, and they can understand all of it. But that just still doesn't give them riding a bicycle.
No.
They have to get on the thing, and then
Right.
probably fall off a few times, and at some point you wobbling, and then, oh, that's it. You suddenly discover this thing called balance that you can't see,
Right.
you
Yeah.
can't
Your
touch, you
body
can't feel,
acclimates to the
but you
balance thing, right?
you suddenly get balance. In the moment you get it, oh, now you've got it. Why? You discovered this, what we're talking about. So now all explanations out the window. It's just you got it, and you might not ride a bicycle for decades, but you get on the bike, you can ride it
Yeah.
because you discovered it. When you discover it yourself, it's yours. When someone tells you, it's just information. There's people. I've been on. I won't name
Yeah. The
people's
old
courses. I've
telling
been
is
on all
not
sorts of
training, right?
courses. Yeah, I've been on all these courses, and they say take lots of notes. I'm like, okay. If you went on a course to train to play tennis, and you had to take lots of notes, I mean, how useful are those notes when you're playing tennis? You can't read your notebook while you're trying to play tennis. I mean, it's
Right.
just crazy.
Right.
You've got to get it. You've got to
You have
discover
to
it. So
immerse yourself in it.
yeah, you got to be in the inquiry. You said Socrates. You got to be in the inquiry to discover something you've never seen before that you've always known.
Right. Yeah. And that's the cool thing about it that people, I see a lot of it just recently. Droves of people are recognizing this is about remembering who you are, not creating who you are, right? That's what we've done in
Yeah,
the
who
outer
were
world
you
with all the,
before you decided? Yeah, who were you before you decided you were limited? And
right,
you wouldn't talk about it as being limited, but let's say, who were you before you decided you're not wanted? Which is one of mine, right? I decided I wasn't wanted. So now I'm not wanted. So now life's about proving I'm the best.
right, right,
Somehow, if I was the best, that makes up that
sure,
trumps not being wanted. But
right,
it never did. No matter how much I was the best, and they go for the next thing and the next thing and a bigger thing and a more glamorous thing and then do it and accomplish it, and that was life or death to accomplish it, and you accomplish it, and then it's like, oh, that's not it either. What else? And you're always trying to chase something
sure,
because you're trying to get back to, as you said, remembering. But I would say trying to get back to who you were before you decided you weren't.
right. Well, when you had that sense of loving and being loved in who you are, what you were doing, and the results that it was getting, if there were, right? Guys like me, I started as an orphan and adoptee. Well, I was set up with two scenarios. One, not wanted. One, wanted,
Yeah,
right? How do you resolve that, right? And it gives an interesting line of query, right? To
yeah,
watch and observe. And it wasn't until later on in my life that I started recognizing, oh yeah, I didn't want to admit that my childhood had that kind of effect, right? Because I was in my head bigger than that. And then I realized, oh, it did have an effect, and it was in these buried thoughts and feelings and beliefs that I had about myself that really weren't mine.
Very good. Yeah. Do what you ended up with. That's right.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
great, you know.
Or yeah.
I had actually, um, there was an instance, a guy named um, Kyle Wynn, and your length of time and landmark, that name may be familiar. He worked with Werner when they went to Russia years ago.
Oh, that was
But
before I was there. Yeah.
he was my coach for a little bit, and he asked me point blank questions when he heard things come out of my mouth that were cognitively dissonant, and he
Mm.
started probing. How do you, when you bring out that cognitive dissonance with others, right, who they think themselves to be as opposed to who they actually are, what kind of processes do you see those individuals going through to cross that abyss?
Well, I mean, I listen, right? And I
Mhm.
listen for that inconsistency. I listen for something that they say, you know, this is kind of intuition as well, or maybe it's just done it so many times with so many people. You can hear when they say something, comes out of their mouth, the
Right.
thing. So, for example, I had a client, and he wasn't charging enough for his services at all. Like, he was charging 600 a month, and should have at least been charging 2,000 a month, right?
Hmm.
At least, maybe 2,500, maybe 5,000. I don't know. Um, but he was charging
Definitely
like
more
600,
value, more than what he was asking for.
really cheap. Well, 600 was the first session, and then he dropped it down to like 350 or something a session, a month. Sorry. I said,
Hmm.
well, how? And he had like 70 clients. I'm like, he's like totally burning out, totally, you know, not making much money either. I said, look, what is it with you? Why can't you charge more? He goes, well, it's easy what I do. You know, I get them to lose weight. They just follow my system. And if they follow the system, they lose weight. I mean, you know, I don't want to manipulate them or just get their money. So, okay. And he said a few more things. And I went back to, I said, I want to take you back to that manipulation. You said manipulation. See, I heard, it's like, I can hear something there, right? There's some
Right.
energy around that. I said, tell me about manipulation and who's manipulated you, or who've you seen get manipulated? Where does that come from? Oh, I says, all the time. I've been manipulated all the time. So tell me, give me some examples. He said, oh, he was a professor and also in business. He said, I got two professors together, we formed a business, and then they paired up and went off and robbed the whole idea and just left me. I was totally manipulated out of that. It was my idea. I said, well, good. Right now, what does that remind you of? Tell me the earliest time you remember feeling the way you're feeling right now and thinking what you're thinking. Like,
Mm.
took me all the way back to when he was 11 years old, and he had a godfather that he worshipped, he adored him. But this is one time he went round and he did something inappropriate, you know, and he was left kind of confused and, you know, blaming himself, thinking there's something wrong with him, making all these decisions. Right? All these are decisions.
Right.
And the guy gave him money, but he always gave him money. But on this particular occasion, he gave him money, and he was like, you don't own me. No one's going to own me, right? So he made a decision like something wrong with him. It's all his fault. No one's going to own me. I don't trust people, especially if they try to give you money. I said, now, how's that impacted life? He goes, oh, man, I'm just seeing all of a sudden this whole world opened up for him. He saw, I've gone through life, and every time I've done really well in a company and they start giving me bonus checks and stuff, I leave. I get uncomfortable and leave. I'm not going to have them own me. You know, so that those decisions at 11 years old were running his entire life. And I got him to get the work he did with people. He got, you know, seriously overweight people to lose over 100 pounds at a time. And they
Mm.
kept it off forever. You know, and he got the value in what he did. So he reduced his hours. He got trained other people to do the work. He got them all doing it. His business completely took off, and he has more time on his hands when he's now doing other things, but he
Sure.
hardly does any of that other stuff, you know. And all because we got to the block. The real limit was not the event. It was all the decisions from that event that just run his entire life.
Hmm.
So I work with people, I listen, and then I follow a kind of like working back to where does that, there, I am that it comes from something.
Sure. Well, and you practice it like you say that once you practice something often enough, it becomes first nature. You just know, you listen, you feel, you respond because you are it now,
Yeah,
right? You've
yeah,
embodied that and you've become a true servant leader where you are out of the way and you're there for them.
great. Yeah, exactly, exactly. You know, and that's not the whole work that I do with people, but that's when something comes up that's stopping
Sure.
them somehow or blocking them or limiting them. And if you're expanding yourself and challenging yourself and taking on bigger in the business world, bigger business opportunities, bigger, responsibilities, you're going to get that stuff that's not you is going to show up as more of a problem.
Sure,
And
sure.
that's when you need to be able to then
And
go sort that out.
that process you just offered, I really hope that our audience picked up on that. And I'm sure as they were listening, that they were looking at themselves and what's going on in there. Hopefully, right? This is where those
Yeah, well,
nuggets.
in the programs I lead in the Middle East and all the programs I led with Lama, there's one like a factor that happens, like a phenomenon that when you're in a group, one of the ways that it works so well is your brain, as I understand it, finds it very difficult to learn when it's being threatened. So if
Oh,
you
yeah.
go to the
Yeah. You have to be
microphone, right, you got the
emotionally
microphone in front
available
of
in order to
200 people.
learn.
Yeah. So if you're in front of the microphone in front of a room and there's 200 people in the room, and you're starting to get questions about, you know, like what we've been talking about you and what's happened with you, you know, that can be quite threatening. So sometimes you talk to the person at the microphone, but you're not really. You're talking to everybody in the room because they're sitting there kind of observing, feeling kind of safe because they're not at the microphone. They're just watching this person. But what's
Mhm.
happening, as you just said, you start to map your own life onto what's happening. And that's where they all have the breakthroughs. That's why you can lead a program to 200 people and they all get breakthroughs. And you don't even have to see
Right.
80% of them. You don't even have to
Right.
talk to 80% of them, at the microphone.
Because
Even
you know
90%.
the process works.
It works because I don't know, you could call it the group dynamic, you could call it, the fact
Well,
that
the shared space, right? When your
mm,
attention, intention, and interactions are focused,
yeah,
everybody is a participant, right?
oh, for
Because there's
sure.
shared energy, I call it the thoughtmosphere, right? And there's ripples that go through it with every person's words because they're all hearing it in different ways. And then you
Yeah,
have that synergy effect that offers the speaker when they're self-reflecting, right? Because there's this interconnectedness, is all I can say,
yeah,
that happens
yeah. Listen,
when you reach that level of awareness.
and when you're leading the program, I often say to people, I'm in the program. I'm seeing stuff about my life. I'm making a note. Oh, God, I need to have a conversation with that person. I
Right.
need to sort that out. I gotta
Right,
make it.
right,
I gotta
right, right.
write it down because
Well,
I
yeah,
won't remember it.
and if you, for me, right, if I'm not doing what I'm saying or offering, then I'm pretty worthless, right? You got to practice what you preach. So in that process, when you're going through things, you're also self-reflecting on your own stuff, right? To see where
Yeah,
you're at with it.
yeah. Some of the
Therein
most
is that,
successful, yeah, some of the most successful programs will be when you not quite have a fight, but let's say you have something go down in the program, let's say on the first day or something like that, and everyone's like, "Whoa, shoot,"
oh yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah,
you go
yeah.
away and you go, oh, "That didn't really work. That interaction didn't really work. I was a bit of an asshole there, I got defensive or I felt threatened or
Right,
or
right.
something." Which you recognize those things. You go to your coach, you get it transformed, then you go back. I mean, that's part of how you're transforming the whole time. But then if you see it and then you get to the bottom of it where it's coming from, and then you go back the next day and share. Oh, by the way, I just want to acknowledge something. Yesterday we had an interaction with with Thomas over here, Thomas, I want to apologize because when you said that, I got threatened. I was back in the schoolyard with this blah blah blah, and he bullied me and did this and that, and I like, so yesterday I got defensive. I apologize,
Right.
and they're all like, "Wow,
Well,
holy
now how
Moses!"
often?
Now you're like the Messiah. Now they think you're amazing because you're so open and honest, but you have to be. You cannot, in the kind of work I do, you cannot preach it. You have to be it. You have to be
Yeah.
living it,
Well,
which is ongoingly.
you set up the environments that's safe and secure for those kinds of things to happen.
Right.
Where in
Hopefully,
the
so, yeah.
normal workplace, it's extremely threatening, and how dare you talk about how you're feeling about something, because it just doesn't fit, right?
Right.
And yet it ought to, right? This is
Yeah.
where the shift takes place in the corporate world with the leadership, personal and um, general, where you take that ownership of who you are, how you feel, and what your suggestions to yourself and others are as to how to shift that so that it's more congruent with your mission.
Okay. Yeah. Great.
I'm just saying the same thing you are, only differently, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think certainly that when I've gone into organizations just recently, it's amazing how open they are. They're a lot more open than you might give them credit for. You think, oh, you're going to an organization, it's going to be office politics, and people are not going to want to share themselves, and there are all these egos flying around. And however, if you get just one person to open up, they all start to open up. It's pretty
Right,
amazing, and
right.
it's
Well, it
the
was
opposite of what they fear.
40 years ago. I was in the aerospace industry. I was in charge of $7 million a month and 800 part numbers, my first corporate job. I sailed to the top of the production chart because of how I dealt with people.
All right.
And I wasn't aware, right? Finally, a couple of supervisors come to my cubicle and said to ask me what I'm doing, right? Because they want to know the
Yeah.
replication, right? And I said, at that time, emotional intelligence wasn't even a word. Interpersonal skills were. And I said, so, it's just how I deal with people. I treat people how I want to be treated. So maybe some interpersonal skills development in our department might be best, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is the mid 80s. Man, you want to talk about disruptor. And the more and I don't want to say pushed, because I really was curious and inquired and got others by questioning, what can be done, and wouldn't this work better, and given justifications and all that. Eventually was told to get a consultant, brought him in, and then was demoted afterwards. So
Wow.
that was the experience of disruptors in the 80s and probably early 90s. And then Cengate came along with learning organizations and the fifth discipline and said, wait a minute, right? There's this balance of self-mastery in the learning organization. And you've got to have that
Right.
possibility there, or things aren't going to quite gel. Now, as we're coming to a close, I really would like to share your insight and understanding of a practical thing that individuals can do in the moment when they find these kind of confrontations internally.
Yeah. Um. Um. Being able to distinguish, or get the difference between what just happened and there's a thing and it goes on the table, bang. Okay, that's what happened. Yeah, I know, but the guy threw it down and he's disrespectful. Wait. What actually happened? He dropped the phone on the table. Oh. So if you could keep forcing yourself to get what's happening distinct from all the added meaning you keep adding to it, and letting that go, you're going to give yourself some freedom in the moment. I mean, as a as a thing to practice, that will give you a lot of freedom. I remember, for example, I got two boys, right? And when they were quite young, the elder one moved past the other one's chair and he was drawing or something. And, I said, wait, what happened? He nudged me on purpose. Wait, what happened? He says, oh, I didn't. I just went past. Wait, what happened? I walked past and I knocked the chair with my knee. Okay. Now, what happened? No, what actually happened? He nudged my chair and he nudged my picture. I said, good, stop. Okay, what happened? And I just did that backwards, and then there was no more fight. It just dropped. Because they weren't making it mean, he hates me, he always tries to spoil it for me, blah, 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 blah. None of that was going on. Once you got them to get, actually, what actually happened? What actually happened? Versus all the meaning we have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. You remind me of when I taught high school for a while. I worked for a residential treatment center, 14 to 21-year-olds. And one of the classes, we had a guy that was 18 and one that was 14. The 18-year-old was trying to be a Buddha, right? Really making some life changes and working hard. And it was obvious that he was trying. And then there was this 14-year-old that was just an instigator, right?
right.
Always trying to trigger people. Well, he finally triggered this other one day, and the older one caught him and started pummeling in the gut, right? But the punches were pulled, and I could tell just by watching. But I let it go, right?
Yeah,
I didn't do anything in the moment because I just had this sense that it was going to be okay, right? And so once they got done with that, I said, "Okay, you guys done?" And they both look at me and like, because I didn't do anything, right? I just let them be them for a moment. And then they both realized that they were being shits, right?
yes,
And I said, okay, so now let's come back to the table and talk about this. What just happened? Meanwhile, one of the girls that was in the class, there was a behavioral tech that was supposed to be there. He was a retired tight end from the Dallas Cowboys, right? So he'd left the room thinking everything was okay. And this gal runs out and tries to find him. He comes back in. He's like, what's going on, right? And the room is
yeah,
still. And he looks at me like, so I talked to him afterwards. And, sometimes the reality is you got to give people space.
yeah, yeah.
If you
Very
don't,
good.
the emotional that you mentioned this earlier, you cannot learn until your emotions are clear. So we put students in classrooms with all kinds of emotional problems from home and everywhere else, and we expect them to learn. Well, until they're emotionally available, they're not going to. They may learn a little bit, but they're not going to become that, oh, I understand myself, right? And I'm being my true self here. Not going to happen until
Right,
later, hopefully, and hopefully to
right.
get the opportunity to do so. Um, it's an amazing process, and guys like you help that along for hundreds, thousands of people over time. And I want to admire, congratulate, and honor that process that in you, that you made yourself available to perform for others as a servant leader.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I really appreciate this conversation. I know it probably went directions that you didn't think it would, and hopefully it was enjoyable and we both gained insights. I know I did.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, very great.
Well, I thank you again, Will. And for Will and myself, namaste and in lakhets. And thanks for sticking with us for this episode of One World in a New World. By all means, recognizing that they are apocalyptic chats, right? We unveil things for our audience and each other in the process. That's the real cool thing about it. So please do subscribe, like, share, make comments. I will respond, and I would imagine my guests will too. So if you've got questions, ask them. That's how we learn. Again,
Yeah,
stop by planetarycitizens.net, pick up the Planetary Citizens Awakening the Heart of Humanity book, and also notice in the video, we have a fundraiser in process for Planetary Citizens. We are a nonprofit. So if you're in America, your donations are tax deductible. So there's another light to shine. Thanks so much again for joining us, and I'll see you next time. Super. Well, I thank you again, Will. And for Will and myself, namaste and in-law catch. And thanks for sticking with us for this episode of One World in a New World. By all means, recognizing that they are apocalyptic chats, right? We unveil things for our audience and each other in the process. That's the real cool thing about it. So please do subscribe, like, share, make comments. I will respond, and I would imagine my guests will too. So if you've got questions, ask them. That's how we learn. Again, stop by planetarycitizens.net, pick up the Planetary Citizens Awakening the Heart of Humanity book, and also notice in the video, we have a fundraiser in process for Planetary Citizens. We are a nonprofit. So if you're in America, your donations are tax deductible. So there's another light to shine. Thanks so much again for joining us, and I'll see you next time.